Hey there, lovely soul. Welcome back to Noah's Stories. How are you feeling today? Have you taken a moment to breathe, to pause, to remember that you matter? Because you do. And sometimes all it takes is one story to remind us of that. Today's story is about two people, one hiding behind silence, the other trapped by expectation. It's about broken pieces, hesitant beginnings, and the quiet kind of love that doesn't show up with fireworks, but stays. So make yourself comfortable, maybe grab a warm drink, and let's dive into a tale where healing begins in the most unexpected way. Crystal chandeliers hung like icicles from the grand ballroom ceiling, casting fractured light across gowns and sharp tuxedos. Chicago in winter, where even handshakes felt cold. Clara Hayes sat quietly at the edge of the room, her ivory dress flowing over unmoving legs. She didn't belong here. Not anymore. Once a rising ballet star, she was now a woman people pitied or politely ignored. Her wheelchair was half hidden behind a large floral arrangement, a self-made refuge from a world that moved too fast. Ethan Caldwell, everyone in the room knew the name, had just arrived. Tall, polished, his eyes cold and unreadable. CEO of the Caldwell Group, heir to a media empire passed down after his father's sudden death. He stood at the center of it all, champagne in hand, nodding to greetings, but his gaze drifted, detached. A drunken man staggered across the floor, stumbling directly toward Clara. It happened fast, the glass tilting, the dark red liquid ready to spill onto her lap. A steady hand shot out, swift, sure, stopping disaster mid-motion. Ethan. He caught the man's arm, redirected the glass, his eyes fixed on Clara. "You don't have to play the hero," Clara said, her tone dry, sardonic. "Not a hero," Ethan replied, lips barely twitching. "Just didn't feel like cleaning wine off your dress tonight." She narrowed her eyes. He wasn't looking at her like she was broken, and that made her cautious, maybe even a little intrigued. 3 days after the gala, Clara heard a knock at her door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her small apartment on Chicago's North Side was usually quiet, the kind of quiet that settled deep. But when she opened the door, Ethan Caldwell stood there, hands in his coat pockets, gray eyes steady and unreadable. "We need to talk," he said, no greeting. Clara rolled back, arching a brow. "Most people start with hello." He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "I need to marry someone within 60 days. She laughed, short, sharp. "You're proposing to me right now? Where's the ring?" "No ring," he replied. "And this isn't about romance. It's a condition in my father's will. If I don't marry, I lose control of the company." Her face shifted from amusement to suspicion. "And I'm your best option?" "Yes." No hesitation. "You're not after my money. You don't care about my name, and I trust you." That last part stopped her cold. "You don't know anything about me. I know you don't want anything from me. That's enough." Clara froze. She didn't want to be part of anyone's deal, but her stepmother's voice echoed in her mind. "You're useless. If you don't figure it out, you're out by the weekend." Her world was crumbling, and Ethan was offering a lifeline. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. "Don't think too long," he replied, voice low. "I'm running out of time." The wedding happened 2 weeks later, inside a historic hotel in the heart of Chicago. There were no romantic vows, no teary eyes, just silence and a sea of skeptical stares. Clara wore a simple white dress, no trailing lace, no veil. She sat tall in her wheelchair, chin lifted, her hands gripped tightly in her lap, pale knuckles betraying her nerves, but her eyes gave nothing away. Ethan wore a sleek black tuxedo, as polished as any high-profile CEO, but his gaze lingered on her a moment longer than necessary. As Clara wheeled down the aisle, he stepped forward and leaned down, whispering, "You look beautiful." She didn't turn. "You don't have to flatter me." "Not flattery," he murmured, "just the truth." The vows were brief, legally worded, precise. No grand declarations, no loud applause, a few polite nods, the soft click of camera shutters. After the ceremony, they moved through a quiet hallway. Clara remained silent. Ethan walking slowly beside her. "You okay?" he asked. "It's just a wedding," she said softly. He paused by the elevator, eyes steady on hers. "This place is yours now. No rules, no obligations, just if you want to stay." Clara held his gaze for a long moment. She didn't respond. Life after marriage didn't start with kisses or sweet words. It started with silence, a strange kind of silence, not heavy, not exactly comfortable, just unfamiliar. They didn't know how to be around each other. Yet, Clara spent most of her time reading in the living room, window cracked open to the faint city light. Ethan disappeared during the day, buried in board meetings and endless calls. But every morning her coffee was waiting, exactly how she liked it. No sugar, extra milk, slightly cooled. The first time she thought it was a fluke. By the third, she knew it was intentional. One day, when the penthouse elevator stalled, Clara sat stranded on the lower floor. Ethan appeared, said nothing, and gently scooped her into his arms. "You don't have to do this," she murmured. "I know," he said quietly. "I want to." She turned away, hiding the sudden ache in her chest. They began to share the long evenings, not through words, but through presence. Ethan didn't try to fix her, didn't pity her. He simply sat, listened to her talk about books, old ballets, quiet losses. One night, when Clara woke in a sweat from a sharp wave of pain, Ethan was already there, sitting beside her, hand on her shoulder, eyes steady. "You didn't sleep?" "Not when you're hurting." Clara had never been heard like that, not with ears, but with heart. She didn't know when she started to trust him, only that slowly the silence between them stopped feeling empty. It became a place of safety, something that felt almost like home. The letter came on a rainy afternoon. No envelope, no return address, just a neatly folded page with one name, Dr. Jonah Reed. Clara read it over and over. "I've reviewed your medical file. There's an experimental treatment. If you're willing, I believe I can help you walk again." She didn't know whether to feel hope or fear. Too many promises had led her off cliffs before. But the name, it wasn't unfamiliar. Dr. Reed had once been a leading neurologist at a prominent rehab center. She remembered hearing about him back when she was in recovery. 3 days later, Clara arrived at a modest clinic on the city's edge. The inside was simple but spotless. Dr. Reed, a man in his 40s with a lean frame and piercing eyes, greeted her with a firm handshake. "This is neuroregenerative stimulation," he explained. "It's painful, but it might reawaken dormant connections. With your case, there's a chance." "Why me?" Clara asked, her voice a mix of doubt and longing. "Because you haven't given up," he said, "and because I want proof that this works." She agreed, but under one condition: absolute secrecy. Ethan couldn't know, not when things between them were still so fragile. Twice a week, Clara left the house with vague excuses. Fresh air, meeting a friend. Ethan always watched her go, eyes asking questions he never voiced. She wasn't ready to tell him. If the miracle didn't happen, she didn't want to drag him into the fall with her. Not again. The penthouse was quiet under the weight of a storm. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the city blurred behind sheets of rain. Clara sat near the window, a cup of tea in hand, her legs tingling after an exhausting therapy session. Ethan appeared with a blanket draped over his arm. He gently laid it across her legs without asking, his touch more tender than words. "You're cold," he said softly, his voice low like the rain. "I can manage," she replied, though her voice trembled. "I know," he murmured, not pulling away. "But you're not alone." She looked up, her eyes locking onto his. The silence between them thickened, heavy with things neither dared to speak. Then she leaned toward him, barely gently, and he didn't move away. His hand found her cheek, warm and sure. Their breaths mingled, fragile and intense all at once. The first kiss came quietly, hesitant, like a question. But when their lips met, the answer was clear. She trembled in his arms, not from weakness, but from the startling feeling of being wanted, not out of pity, but for herself. When they pulled apart, Ethan whispered, I've wanted to do that for a long time. Clara ducked her head, cheeks flushed. Your trouble, Caldwell. Only for you, he replied, his eyes lit with something unguarded. The room remained quiet, but now the silence wasn't cold. It was something warm, something new, and they were stepping into it together. Clara woke earlier than usual, not for therapy, but because today she wanted to do something small for Ethan. Not out of duty, but because her heart had begun to care. She moved carefully through the large kitchen, preparing honey-glazed chicken and herbed rice. Something he once mentioned smelled like comfort. She packed it neatly into a lunchbox and made her way to the Caldwell Group's headquarters. The receptionist looked surprised but polite, guiding her to the executive floor. Ethan's office. Clara didn't plan a grand gesture, just drop off the lunch, say something light, and leave. But as the door opened, she froze. Ethan stood by his desk, and Sabrina Voss, poised, was leaning in to kiss his cheek. Not a casual peck. It lingered, bold, intentional, too close for strangers. Ethan didn't kiss her back, but he didn't step away either. Clara didn't say a word, but her heart cracked loud in her chest. She didn't drop the lunchbox. She didn't cry. She just held her breath, her spine stiff with pride, and rolled herself out before the ache could reach her eyes. By the time she reached the lobby, her hand still gripped the insulated bag. The food inside was still warm. That night, Ethan came home late. Clara didn't ask. She sat at the dinner table, her untouched plate of chicken long cold in the steamer. "You cooked?" he asked, surprised. "No," she replied, eyes on her book. "Someone else did." He stared at her for a long moment, then sat down quietly, not touching his food. Clara bit her lip, eyes stinging. She didn't know what hurt more, the fact that he let Sabrina get that close, or the fact that she'd wanted to believe he was different. One evening, he sat beside her in the living room. "Clara," he said gently, "is something wrong?" She didn't look at him. "She's beautiful. Perfect, even." Sabrina." He was silent for a beat, then exhaled. "She came uninvited. I didn't call her, and nothing," he met her eyes. "Nothing happened. You didn't push her away. I didn't want to make a scene." "And what about me?" Clara's voice cracked. "Who am I in all this?" Ethan didn't move. "You're my wife." "On paper," she whispered. He stood, took a step, then stopped, his voice low and steady. "You think I kissed you because I had to?" She didn't answer, but inside, her heart whispered, "No." "I'm just scared I'll never be enough to be chosen." The 50th anniversary gala for Caldwell Group was a glittering affair held in a luxury hotel ballroom. Guests poured in like a river, cameras flashed, laughter and clinking glasses filled the space. Clara didn't know what pushed her to attend the gala that night. Maybe it was leftover anger, or maybe, deep down, she wanted to be seen. Not as a shadow behind Ethan, but as herself, whole, present. She arrived late, not from hesitation, but because she needed time. Not for makeup or dresses, for her heart. The ballroom glittered under golden chandeliers. Ethan stood among admirers, smiling, nodding, performing. And there she was, Sabrina, poised like she still belonged beside him. She didn't glance Clara's way, but Clara saw everything. Silently, Clara wheeled into the center of the room, eyes fixed. Conversation slowed. Light dimmed. She stopped, gripped the armrests. Her entire body trembled, not just with fear, but defiance. Slowly, from legs once declared useless, she rose. The room froze, no applause, no gasp, just silence. She stood, shaking, imperfect, but on her own. Her eyes met Ethan's. He was staring at her. No Sabrina, no crowd, just her. "You may not have chosen me," Clara said, voice breaking, "but I choose myself." And just as her legs gave way, Ethan surged forward, catching her in his arms. "I did choose you, Clara," he whispered, holding her tight. "You just didn't see it." Clara woke to the pale hum of hospital light. Everything was quiet. just the steady beep of the heart monitor. It took her a moment to remember the gala, standing, and then collapsing. Ethan sat by her bedside, his hand wrapped around hers. His eyes were red but focused. "You scared the hell out of me," he said softly. Clara nodded faintly. I really stood." "I know," he whispered, his voice breaking with awe. "I saw you. You're stronger than anyone I've ever known." A long pause stretched between them. Then Claire spoke, her voice low. "Do you know what I thought?" Ethan shook his head. "That I was just part of the plan, a contract. And when I stopped being useful, you'd go back to your world, to women like Sabrina." Ethan leaned closer, his hand gently cupping her cheek, warm and real. "Clara," he said slowly, "at first, yes, it was a plan. But after that, it became everything I never saw coming." She looked at him, eyes shimmering. "And I kept trying so hard to be worth it." "You don't have to prove anything," he said with a small smile. "You already are the best thing that's ever happened to me." Clara swallowed hard. For the first time, she believed it. Soft morning light slipped through the curtains, casting a golden glow over the quiet bedroom. Clara sat in her wheelchair, hands tightly gripping the pregnancy test. 2 red lines, clear, unmistakable. She could barely breathe. Once, doctors told her her body was too broken to carry life. And yet, here it was, a flicker, a whisper, something fragile, something fiercely alive. Clara quietly tucked the test into the drawer, her hands still trembling. She wheeled out of the room, the soft sound of her tires whispering across the hardwood floor. Ethan was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hair tousled, humming a tune she didn't recognize as he poured coffee. "Morning," he said, smiling as he handed her the usual cup. "Thanks," she murmured, her hands cold as they wrapped around the mug. He tilted his head, studying her. "You look different. Something wrong?" Clara took a breath, eyes fixed on the coffee. Part of her wanted to hold the secret a little longer, a soft, sweet truth just for herself. But then she whispered, "Ethan, I'm pregnant." Silence. 1 beat. 2. Then he laughed, a soft, stunned, almost choked laugh. "You're serious?" She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. He stepped forward, pulling her into his arms, holding her tight like he was afraid she'd vanish. "A baby," he whispered. "Ours." She buried her face in his chest. "Are you sure you want this?" "More sure than anything. You and this baby are everything I didn't know I needed." 3 years passed like a long, steady breath. On a soft spring morning, golden sunlight painted the park. Trees bloomed, the wind whispered through new leaves. Clara sat quietly on a wooden bench, one hand resting gently on her belly, life growing inside her again for the second time. She wore a simple cream dress, her hair down, loose in the breeze. Her face no longer carried the weight of the past, only calm and a quiet resolve. Ethan stood across the park, chasing after bursts of laughter from Lily, their 3-year-old, with chestnut curls and storm gray eyes just like her father's. They looked like a dream Clara once thought belonged to someone else. But today, she decided to step into that dream. "Ethan?" she called, her voice soft but steady. He turned, smiling. "Yeah?" Clara rose. No cane, no wheelchair, no warning. Ethan froze. The noise, the lights, the people, they all disappeared. His world narrowed to her, and as she stood, his breath caught, eyes glistening, flooded with pride. So raw it almost broke him. She walked, each step imperfect but determined. She wasn't fighting to walk anymore. She was walking to live. When she reached him, Ethan opened his arms. Clara fell gently against his chest, breathless, tearful, laughing through the quake in her heart. "I told you," she whispered, her hand pressed to his chest. "I don't need anything but you." He held her close, his voice breaking into her hair. "And I've never stopped being right here, with you." Lily bounded over, wrapping tiny arms around their legs. "Family hug," she squealed. And under the wide, forgiving sky, they held each other, 3 hearts beating in rhythm. Not a perfect picture, but theirs. Not an ending, just the start of forever. A story of love, courage, and the first steps we take when we walk together. Thank you for staying till the end, beautiful soul. Clara and Ethan's journey wasn't perfect, but it was real, and sometimes real is all we need. Because love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just someone staying when you expect them to leave. It's a hand reaching for yours after the storm. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to hear it. Drop a comment, share a thought, or simply say hello. Until next time, take care of your heart and remember, the first step to healing is choosing yourself.